Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm your host, Amanda Lamb. In today's deep dive conversation with WRAL Hidden History reporter Heather Leah about off the beaten path summer excursions, we're talking about a magical place in Tarboro, North Carolina, where history and nature meet in a very beautiful and sacred way. Heather, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So there's a lot to see in Tarboro, but we're going to start talking about this cemetery because it's very beautiful. It's kind of tucked away. You might miss it if you didn't know it was there. Tell me about it. Where is it? And describe it.
So the cemetery is at Calvary Episcopal Churchyard, and it's not only a beautiful and historic cemetery. It's very gothic style. Looks like something you would see in Europe, not North Carolina. But it's also one of the state's most beautiful arboretums with trees and plants from across the globe. So it's an enclosed Gothic-style churchyard. The ground and graves are just cloaked in ivy. There's little brick walkways that just meander through the cemetery. The trees, some of them are 150 years old. Some of them are crooked with age. There's these beautiful ancient live oaks, and they just create this green dome overhead. It's beautiful. It's ethereal. It feels like you've stepped into another world.
And, you know, obviously a lot of people are interested in the history of cemeteries and the graves specifically. But what's really fascinating about this place is it's a combination of that and then these plants and trees, I mean, that are so old. I mean, it's an arboretum in a way.
Yeah, it really feels like, you know, when you're a child and you read the book The Secret Garden, when you step in here, and it feels like a secret world because the brick wall surrounds the entire cemetery. So you're really in this enclosed space. And if you look at pictures, which we do have in the online story on the website, you can see these graves, these ornate, beautiful graves from the late 1800s or mid 1800s. And they're literally coming out of this cloak of ivy. Some of the graves are extremely ornate. They're like looking at artwork.
Yeah, I mean, and it begs the question, so who is buried there? Are there, you know, famous people buried there or people that contributed to the history of this area or North Carolina?
Yeah, so the church itself, first of all, is one of the oldest churches in the state. The church itself really dates back to the 1700s, or the parish. The building was built in the 1800s, but it's a very, very historic church. So there were many statesmen, soldiers, and clergy buried here. And then some of the graves are very eye-catching. I know that there's one pair of graves that I was told the story. It's these two graves that connect to each other, the headstones, and then it's almost like a tub. So it doesn't go like a headstone into the ground, but rather the headstone goes into like a stone tub. And there's two different tubs with flowers growing out in the middle. And this was a more common style of grave in that time period, partially to protect from animals and things digging around. But I wondered about it because they're connected, but the dates show that they died as children. And it's one of the most noticeable graves, but the two girls were best friends, and they died together in an accident at the lake, and their parents chose to bury them next to each other forever. So there's just some really beautiful graves, and there are some, important people who are buried there.
And history and stories there, absolutely. Well, we will be right back after the break. Welcome back to the WRAL Daily Download. So, Heather, we're talking about this beautiful cemetery, but that's not the only thing in Tarboro. There's a lot of other things to see. It's such a historic town. And if you're going to go to Tarboro for a summer excursion and you're going to check out this cemetery, you should probably take a look at what else is there. So you mentioned there's a really neat town square not far.
Yeah, and town common is the phrase for this one, and that's important. The differentiation, I'm not going to be able to say that word right, but the difference is that Tarboro has the only remaining Revolutionary era, Colonial-era town common. So this town common is absolutely beautiful. It's very close to the cemetery, right? So you can visit them both easily on the same day. You probably could walk between them. At first glance, it looks like a simple grassy nature park, but as you look closer, you're able to see some remnants of its colonial history. In fact, George Washington himself walked across the land of this park. It's one of only 2 original colonial town commons in the country. One is in Boston, which that makes sense, and then one is in this little town of Tarboro in North Carolina. So it's kind of a rare place to be able to visit.
So it sounds like there's more to do in Tarboro than just for this one cemetery, that people should come in and check out the history there.
Yeah, originally town commons were designed for the common grazing of livestock, community outings, military drills. There were originally some schools on the common, and they were also places for community gatherings. So town commons were once very common, but most of them have been developed over in the centuries since they were built. So to have one right here in North Carolina is pretty incredible. George Washington, there's a marker there that shows that on his southern tour in 1791, which take that in, that this common, this park has been there
that long.
It's older than Pullen Park, which we already talked about. It's one of the oldest parks in the country. That he stayed there during his southern tour, and you can go there and see there are some things to see there, historic sites. There's the Wyatt Fountain, which looks very historic and regal, as well as a tombstone-shaped monument, a memorial to the USS Maine, which sank in 1898. And if any of you are familiar with the rallying cry for war, remember the Maine. This is the boat.
This is the boat that they're talking about.
So there's a lot to see there. And then there's also an 1840 cotton press, the last of its kind, and you can see it in Tarboro. So there's a lot of history
going on in Tarboro. And, going back to the cemetery for a minute, I mean, I think we're so fortunate, right, in North Carolina to still have a lot of history, to have the churches, to have the cemeteries. And I know there are people that really, this is something that they really enjoy. So there are many places like this in North Carolina. If you just go online and you look, you look up some of these small towns where you can find these historic cemeteries and churches.
North Carolina's small towns have so much hidden history, and we don't often go to them because they're small and we don't know what we're going to have to do there. But there where this history is hidden, I have to say, if you pick something to do this summer, please visit this churchyard. It is beautiful. It's got these gothic archways and you can walk through them in the ivy. It is enchanting. The history is rich. Some of these trees are 150 years old. They come from as far away as Lebanon because the person who was one of the church leaders at the time, 150 years ago, he had a passion for arboretums. And so he went and collected trees from all over the globe and brought them to this cemetery. So it's
a magical place.
You should see it. It's quite magical.
Well, Heather, thank you so much for sharing this journey with us and also sharing all the other journeys this week, giving people some great ideas about summer excursions. We hope you've enjoyed this special week, kind of taking you around North Carolina into some of the special places that you can visit this summer. And thanks for listening to the WRAL Daily Download. If you'd like to hear more about things to do, places to visit, restaurants to enjoy in North Carolina, check out WRAL Out and About, a weekly podcast from WRAL News. Find WRAL Out and About in your podcast app.